Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about two soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is Joe DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Up first for our two games this week is 2012's Gravity Rush, a French comic-inspired take on a girl being able to change the direction of her personal gravity created by the mind behind Silent Hill.
After that, it's a heartbreaking tale of romance, regret, and mortality, told in reverse. 2011's To the Moon.
I think if you want to go on like a very superficial aspect, a theme that can tie these games together is space things. Because we're talking about gravity in one game, and it literally says to the moon.
Yeah, the moon is in space, as some might not know. See, I was worried. I'm glad you figured something out, because I've been racking my brain for days to be like, what's the connecting theme between these two?
There is also a deeper level, if you're really curious, and that would be like these unusual animals. Like one has a gravity cat. That's like literally the best way I can explain this being. And then there's also origami rabbits. So like there are a couple things.
A lot of origami rabbits all over the place. Sad origami rabbits.
Well, it's 2020. Joe, welcome back from vacation. How are you doing?
I'm tired. It was a good vacation, though. I got to sit on a beach. So the one thing that I did really enjoy, so two things, actually. One being mostly related to the show, and the other just being something that I wanted to talk about. The show thing is that at one point we decided we were going to use my Spotify to like put music in the condo that we were renting. And so I just handed my phone to people, and it was like 90s hip hop. There's the playlist we're going to listen to. And then, like, I very cleverly just sort of snuck a couple of songs in there from games, and no one noticed.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say you put on the original Soundchat Spotify playlist. Not necessarily our podcast, but the video game music playlist.
I thought about doing that if I was... So one of the nights I was supposed to cook, and I was going to do that the night that I cooked. But then I got sick for like 2 days.
Oh, no.
And I figured it probably wasn't a great idea to volunteer to cook if that was a possibility. The other thing is that, hey, margaritas in Mexico are really good, and drivers are exceptionally good to the point where it's terrifying to ride anywhere in Mexico. I'm invincible now. Traffic can never touch me again.
I mean, I'm going to hope that you didn't just jinx yourself, but I'm glad you got better. Even though it's, tough to fully recover from, a vacation and all that. But good to be back. And I do mention it's 2020 because this is our first episode that we are recording in 2020. So Happy New Year from us. A little delayed, I guess. I don't know how long you can say Happy New Year in a new year, a new decade. But when we're talking about the things that have happened with composers that we've talked about so far in composer follow-up headlines, it's the start of the year. So I think a lot of people are just kind of coasting on news. But as of tomorrow, when we're recording, there is a Pokemon Direct coming up. I'm sure a Smash Brothers DLC announcement is within the next several weeks. So we could be hearing about different composers doing remixes for music. So we'll have news to talk about. But in the meantime, since it's our first episode recording in 2020, as far as what we're doing, we finally get the chance to put in stone our top 10 favorite games from 2019. So figure we just run down those lists quickly.
Yeah, mine is starting from 10 and going down to 1. Kingdom Hearts 3, Katana Zero, Piku Niku, Fire Emblem Three Houses, Cadence of Hyrule, Resident Evil 2, Judgment, Sayonara Wild Hearts, Devil May Cry 5, and Untitled Goose Game.
Honk, you got the goose at number 1. Very interesting. My list is several similar games, but in a different order. From 10 to 1, I have Life is Strange 2, Erica, Untitled Goose Game, Katana Zero, Sayonara Wild Hearts, Kingdom Hearts 3, Resident Evil 2, Devil May Cry 5, Judgment, and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Really? Jedi hit number 1. Oh.
Yeah, that hit number 1. And I'm pretty sure that's not a recency bias. Like, yeah, it was one of the later games I played in the year, but it's just one of those things where, like, yeah, it didn't do anything like astonishingly, exceptionally well, breaking new grounds, but it's like, it's one of those game combinations you look at and it's like, this is so my game. Like, I'm all about this, and even if it was, like a baby's first Souls, like, that's kind of what I needed, so.
I still have to play it. In fact, Life is Strange 2 is another game on your list that I really have to play. Erica as well. But, hey, it's a new year and too many games came out last year, and we're going to have the same problem this year.
Maybe even more so. So, let me start out this week by talking about my game, and it's finally my pleasure to get to talk about Gravity Rush. I know that may be a name that doesn't, ring a bell to most people. Gravity Rush is an unusual name, but this game is the brainchild of Keiichiro Toyama. And Keiichiro Toyama is a video game designer who created the Silent Hill and the Siren or Forbidden Siren franchises. So, when you talk about like Silent Hill 2, like that was someone else. He and his team had already gone on to establish Project Siren to make the Siren games. But like the first Silent Hill game, like that's his creation. He directed that. Like that's his work. And so while Toyama was at Konami, he had this thought for a game that was just this vague image of people floating in space. So when the time came that he wanted to prove to himself as a designer that he could make it outside of the survival horror genre, this floating person idea eventually turned into a game called Gravity Daze. And Gravity Daze being spelled D-A-Z-E, as in you're dizzy from it. Gravity Daze is the name of this game in Japan. It released on February 9th, 2012 for the PlayStation Vita. The West knows the game, though, as Gravity Rush. It released on Vita in North America on June 12th, 2012, which was almost 4 months after the Vita's launch in North America. About, 1.5 to 2 months for the Japanese launch after its launch there. So, like, it didn't hit launch for either period, but a little bit after. Australia and Europe got the game on June 14th and June 15th, 2012, respectively. I think the game is the most accessible today, though, via a remastered version that was created by Bluepoint Games, who are among the best remasters in the business. This is available on PlayStation 4. It launched in North America on February 2nd, 2016. I'd say wait for it to go on sale digitally. It's list price of $30, but you'll find it often going on sale for less than $10 if you do not have it already. Gravity Rush is a game that was developed by Sony Computer Entertainment Japan Studio. Internally, there's a team of Team Gravity. This was formerly Project Siren. And published by Sony Computer Entertainment. It is a first-party published game. What is Gravity Rush? It's a third-person, open-world action game. So you have this protagonist. Her name is Kat. And that's with a K, K-A-T. She can run around the world. She can jump. She can perform melee attacks, punches and kicks. Kind of as you'd expect of games like this. But the unique thing about Gravity Rush and how it is controlled is that players can, at the push of a button, it's R on the PlayStation Vita, it's R1 on PS4, you push this button and Kat floats slightly off the ground in a suspended state, and a small circular reticle appears on screen. Now the player can move this reticle either with gyro controls or with the right analog stick to kind of aim this reticle anywhere in the world. And then by pressing that same button, the R1 button again, Kat's personal gravity changes in that direction. So this is essentially the most optimal way to move about the world. Say, like, if you have a waypoint that's, so far away, like, most action games would be like, all right, well, I'm going to run the character, run, okay, through alleyways in the city, and, oh, maybe there'll be something I have to jump on, and we'll keep running. No, for this, you just suspend Cat, kind of point towards the sky, maybe like in a 45-degree direction, say, all right, gravity, go. And Cat flies in the direction that you choose, and then while she's in midair, you suspend her again, and she stops, and you move the reticle again, and then you point towards that waypoint. And it's really a lot of fun. Cat does have a health bar, of course, because there are enemies that you have to beat up. In fact, actually battling enemies makes it really a whole lot more dynamic when you have control of gravity. Yeah, there may be like weak points on the ground, and okay, it may be good for Cat to, beat those weak points up, but if the weak point is on like an enemy's head or shoulder, and you need to kind of access it from the top, well, change gravity, get high above them, and then Cat can like lock on to these weak points and do like a spiral corkscrew foot dive onto those weak points. Pretty interesting way of thinking about combat. You can't change gravity forever, though. There is a sort of gravity meter that decreases when you land back on the ground with no gravity. After a few seconds, the bar refills quickly, so then you can do that again, but you are limited at the start. But don't worry, you can improve your skills over time. There are purple gems throughout the world that Cat can collect, especially when she can go anywhere with control of gravity and collect these gems. You can spend then those gems for character improvements, more health, more gravity meter, more damage on your attacks, other character improvements like this. The story of Gravity Rush, it's basically a teenage girl wakes up with no memory of who she is. She has amnesia in this town called Hexaville. It's this floating city that is near this structure called the World Pillar. Now, gravity storms take place in Hexaville, and these shadow monsters called the Nevi spawn from these storms. So this amnesiac girl is accompanied by a mysterious cat named Dusty. And Dusty is made up of like black space, like literally black space. And it's because this animal accompanies this girl that the locals begin to call this girl Cat with a K. So it is Dusty that gives Cat these special abilities to be able to control her own gravity. And this ability gives her the title among locals as a shifter, or like a gravity shifter. Now, over time, Cat will meet a police officer named Sid, a rival shifter named Raven, and a criminal named Alias, who seems to be able to control the Nevi. But through it all, Cat must restore different parts of Hexaville that have oddly gone missing, while the local military wants to make use of the abilities of these shifters. Ultimately, the questions are like, what is Cat's true identity? What are the Nevi? And just what the heck is actually going on? Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are your experiences with Gravity Rush?
Absolutely nothing. I know what Cat looks like, and that is where my knowledge of Gravity Rush ends. I've never even seen gameplay of it. Like, hearing you describe the gameplay of Gravity Rush, that's the first I've ever even heard of how that game plays.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, Cat is this character with tan skin, like red irises, long blonde hair, and this kind of one-piece body outfit that's like black with kind of gold swirls on it, if you kind of want to imagine the character in your head.
She's very popular with cosplayers.
Yeah.
That's how I know what she looks like.
Yeah, she's pretty. She's cute. Yeah, definitely a good cosplayer choice. Also, this character of Raven is another one. Yeah, definitely a popular choice there. So yeah, like that's basically like the gist of it. Like it's really based on this hook that at any time you can just change your gravity, and it's your way of moving grandly about the world. How was it developed though? It started with Keiichiro Toyama pitching the game to Sony in April 2008. pitching it as a gravity action game for the PlayStation 3, oddly enough, under the title of Gravité. And, with the acute accent E and all that. There was some interest in the team with, the gyro controls of the 6-axis controller. But when Toyama was briefed early on the capabilities of Sony's next-generation portable, the NGP, which would become the PlayStation Vita, they thought, these gyro controls would be perfect, and so the project shifted to become a PlayStation Vita game. But let's be honest, though, this was probably for the best because Sony really needed game content on PlayStation Vita.
And also the 6-axis wasn't very good.
Yeah, it wasn't that good at the whole gyro thing. Vita was definitely much better in that regard, and if that was a critical thing for Toyama's vision, then, yeah, by all means. One of the big problems about the Vita, aside from the memory cards that were specifically Sony designed and
way overpriced,
heinously expensive. One of the big problems about Vita was that there wasn't really any new first-party IP established for the Vita. It was great as an indie machine. It had a lot of knockoffs of already established Sony properties, but it was Media Molecule's Tearaway and this from Sony Japan. The Japan studio. So, Gravity Rush, in a way, stands out in that regard. It's one of the better games for PlayStation Vita. You can throw Persona 4 Golden in that regard. I don't know how that has never, ever made its way off of the Vita. It's kind of a shame, actually. But as far as first-party games, Gravity Rush is very unique in this regard. When the team started to develop for the NGP, for the Vita, they expected it to have the same specs as a PlayStation 3.
Why would you ever have expected that? I don't understand.
Definitely not the case, even though it was going to be releasing 5 years after the PS3. Handheld technology does not make leaps and advancements, especially when you compare to the cell processor of the PS3. So when the Vita ended up having far less power than the PS3, they had to reassess the entire project. It led to all of their previous work being scrapped. And apparently difficulties with the Vita's still fluctuating hardware specs during the first year of development. It really forced the development team to develop the game on a Windows PC initially. In working in that environment before then seeing if they could get it running on Vita. This was very odd and unique for a first-party Sony studio, but when you're working with still to be determined hardware, it kind of makes sense, I guess. There was also a bit of a panic when Sony was hoping for this game to be a Vita launch title for December 2011 in Japan. It was only in January 2011 that the game was even running for the first time on Vita hardware, and the team was focusing on polishing the graphics and the gameplay. Even then, they only got the game running at 540p and 30 frames per second. Even had some pretty long loading times. So they got it working. It's fine there. It's a good experience on Vita, but they were kind of up against it in terms of deadlines. Different inspirations for the game came from Crackdown, actually, especially with the gem collecting in the world. The movie Hancock, for the idea of the superhero, or to really capture the feeling of what it's like to move powerfully through the air. Also, The Fifth Element was an inspiration in terms of world design, and city feel was borrowed by the real-life cities of Copenhagen and Amsterdam. The overall style of Gravity Rush, it's this cel-shaded style, so it's maybe a little bit manga-inspired, but most of the influence comes from these Franco-Belgian bande dessinée comics. Toyama cites specifically the artists of Jean Giraud and Anki Bilal as direct inspirations. There's even a spoken language in the game. And of course, lots of subtitles. But this spoken language that you hear throughout the game is a made-up language that Toyama created. But it is primarily rooted in French. and you would be understandable for thinking that it is French. This was done because Toyama had thoughts that Japanese dubs of French films felt natural to him. And so, when the shift of this game to the PlayStation Vita and the prominence of wanting it as an early title on the system, now considering the Western market, especially for the Vita, this kind of impacted the game's story and presentation to try to appeal to as many players as possible. You do have, references to Japanese anime, not necessarily like in the content of the anime, but it has a look and feel of like an anime or a manga. Even comic books, like cutscenes are presented in comic book like panels in a way, with, cutouts of characters' faces, text bubbles. So it kind of looks like a manga or a comic book in that regard. But yeah, the world has this kind of French comic look to it. Ultimately, though, because of these deadlines that they were up against, the team had to cut a lot of the intended later narrative. And it shows, but we'll get to that. Also, a big challenge in development was collision detection. Most of the time in an open world, they don't have to worry about how objects will collide with different objects, especially in taller towers and skyscrapers and things like that, because when will the player ever interact with such a thing? Well, when the player can go anywhere with the power of gravity and can land on different surfaces and collide with different things, you kind of have to test everything in the open world. So that definitely added to a lot of the testing time. So in the West, the game was initially referred to its Japanese title of Gravity Days. Then when it was revealed and shown off more at E3 2011, it was referred to the title of Gravity. But then it did get its official English title, Gravity Rush, in August of 2011. But yet it still gets a little weirder. I found out that the game apparently has an exceptionally long subtitle, which was obviously influenced by the film Dr. Strangelove, or if you know that film, it's Dr. Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. So bear with me as I try to pronounce this full subtitle. Gravity Desu, Juryoku teki memai, Joso e no kikan ni oite, Kanonjo no nai uchu ni shojita setsuro. Yeah.
I don't envy you having to do that.
Or apparently it translates out to Gravity Days, the perturbation of her inner space caused by the repatriation of the upper stratum.
What?
I don't know. I think they're trying to be pretentious as heck. And boy, that sure is. Honestly, though, if you do play the PS4 version of this game, the remastered version, shouts out to Bluepoint. They are the best in the industry. I can't wait to see what they're doing next. Are they doing a Demon's Souls remake? When will they get to make their own IP, their own first original project? But they are the best at remastering games. They did the Uncharted Nathan Drake collection. They did the Shadow of the Colossus remake. Both the Eco and Shadow on PS3, but then also the Shadow of the Colossus PS4 version. So they're incredible. Bluepoint is so good. And Toyama wanted this remastered because he wanted to bring Gravity Rush to a wider audience. Obviously, PlayStation Vita wasn't the most successful. So Bluepoint not only bumped the game up to 1080p 60, but they were also able to implement upgrades to the lighting, blur effects, the draw distance, which was a big problem in the Vita version, and the graphics engine just looks better as a whole. It's remarkable when you compare the two. Bluepoint did an amazing job. Now, the game was reviewed favorably with a Metacritic score of 83 on Vita, but then it was an 80 4 years later on PS4. And there's a decent reason why for that. Honestly, Kat as a heroine and the gravity control, those were definitely praised. But many critics found that the story loses focus, it falls apart, and it leaves too much unanswered at the end. yeah, like who is Kat? You still don't know at the end of Gravity Rush. Sorry. To the sequel. So you can kind of tell how things just kind of had to get scrapped and packaged into a sequel, honestly. They also found the combat to be a little too repetitive. Now, for the remastered version, critics found the visuals to be, yes, a remarkable upgrade when you compare it to the original, but that doesn't really fix the core gameplay and narrative concerns. So, if anything, the 4 years, it's still the same game, and 4 years weren't really kind to it. Like, it's still the same game. Gravity Rush is a pretty niche title. By August 2012, Gravity Rush had sold 200,000 copies worldwide. And, honestly, the remaster hasn't really set the world on fire. So, yeah, kind of a niche game. It did win the 2012 Tokyo Game Show Game of the Year award, though. And Toyama accepted the award, and he said, we look forward to making a sequel. So he kind of hinted at it there. And it was nominated for Best Handheld Game at Spike's 10th Annual Video Game Awards in 2012. Cat was added to the Everybody's Golf 6 roster, apparently, as DLC shortly after the release. Little Big Planet, 2 karting. Also got costumes for Cat, Raven, Alias, and Unica. So costumes there. But players may also remember that Cat was one of the DLC fighters in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. I think it was her and the Starhawk character?
I think so.
Yeah, it was like only a couple DLC characters for that game. The legacy of this game, Gravity Rush 2, or Gravity Days 2 in Japan, that was announced at TGS 2015, and then it was released on PlayStation 4 in Japan on January 19th, 2017. The rest of the world got the game either the day before or the day after. Like, really close worldwide release there. So yeah, like, that's Gravity Rush, the game as a whole. Like, the game isn't a remarkable title by any means. It's a fun protagonist. It's a fun gameplay mechanic. But the story kind of falls apart at the end. The combat gets repetitive. Pretty good sequel as far as I've heard. I actually haven't played, but it's one I really enjoyed playing on PlayStation Vita. Absolutely, because there were only so many games that you could play that were exclusive to PlayStation Vita. I wanted to bring this game to the show, though, because its soundtrack is remarkable. And the soundtrack is composed by Kohei Tanaka. Kohei Tanaka, born on February 14th, 1954, in Ebisu-bashi. It's in Osaka Prefecture. So Kohei Tanaka is 65 years old, getting up there in years. He learned the piano in elementary school and eventually wanted to be a composer. So he went to university to do just that. He studied at Tokyo University of the Arts and even Berklee College of Music here in the United States in Boston. Eventually, he was employed playing the piano in a hotel lounge, and he was requested to arrange a song in Arcadia of My Youth, Endless Orbit SSX, which was a 1982 anime in Japan. And so this was his first work as a composer. So since then, he especially became known amongst anime fans with his work on the late 80s show Gunbuster. Kohei Tanaka is really well known for anime work, and he aims to compose songs that, quote, calmly and emotionally elicit emotions, as well as songs with burning souls. Not much else readily available on Kohei Tanaka. Kind of gives me a similar feel, actually, with Hiroyuki Sawano that I talked about last week, where it's like this notable name in the anime industry, and whether it's they're Japanese, they want to stay kind of to themselves a little bit. They don't publicize themselves or their methodologies or their past too much. Not much available in terms of interviews with them that kind of really dives into their methodologies, which is unfortunate.
Spoiler, mine is very similar despite not being Japanese, despite being from this side of the pond.
Huh. And that's always unfortunate. But we try and we want to convey as much as we learn to you as we do our research. So Kohei Tanaka is most well known, like I said, as an anime composer. One Piece is his big claim to fame. He composes the score to One Piece, and what a gig to get now for as long as that show has been running.
Never gonna end. Ever.
Never, ever. But also he composes for plenty of titles, ones that I've heard of being Sakura Wars, Desert Punk, Rosario plus Vampire, Angelic Lair, and Gunbuster. Games, certainly some One Piece games, like particularly World Seeker, he composed for. Also the Sakura Wars games, like the Wii's So Long My Love, Gravity Rush 2, also Alundra, Resonance of Fate, and Paladin's Quest. So he has quite the resume to him. Definitely big in Japan, particularly for One Piece. That's really, really the big one. And when I heard that connection between when hearing the Gravity Rush soundtrack, and then it's like, oh, and he does the score for One Piece? Yeah, that checks out. That makes a whole lot of sense. Specifically for the Gravity Rush soundtrack, though, Tanaka was brought on board the project because Keiichiro Toyama really felt that Tanaka was the only one who could recall these orchestral melodies of animations from the 1970s, which was I guess something for these French comics in the 1970s, all kind of trying to create this feeling. So Tanaka was brought on the project early on. He used a mixture of acoustic orchestra, electric guitar and bass, drums, saxophone, just a lot of brass too, as well. He also used a synth-sound board, so a synth instrument, specifically with that brand title, to create some more experimental sounds. And the game doesn't have one consistent genre. There's a whole bunch of different feels to the world of Hexaville, whether it's just a nice little town or a kind of Bourbon Street-like jazzy area, or you're getting to more the industrial part of the town, so you're getting some more metallic sounds. And so the genres kind of change based on each area, but it still has a kind of a cohesive sound with all its different instruments. So what does the music to Gravity Rush sound like? Let's get to the 5 critical tracks. We'll start with Discovery of Gravitation. This song plays during the opening cutscene of the game. So it's a pretty good introduction to the world. Especially you're exploring the sights of this old town, the first section that you'll explore in the game, as a red apple rolls down the stairs to represent gravity. This track actually starts out, not in the clip, but the track itself starts with these really gentle, these high-pitched piano notes. But it's this swell into this great orchestral sound that just introduces you to the world. It kind of has an accordion, in a way, feel to it, to kind of give that French-like aesthetic. It's just a really great piece that kind of opens the game up, opens the world up. And, I forgot to mention this earlier, but, sometimes we'll like to compare composers to others, especially with their style and whatnot. I feel like in the last several weeks of the show, I feel like as far as the epic scale, for example, Revo and Sawano, they kind of have this same sort of similar epic sound to them. And so it feels similar to maybe pair them as contemporaries of each other. I feel like if there's any contemporary in a way for Tanaka here, Kohei Tanaka makes me think a lot of Joe Hisaishi.
Yeah.
This Ghibli-like sound is very comparable. And maybe that's also something to do with their age in a way. But I think we're going to get that feeling several times of like, oh, this could be a Joe Hisaishi piece, a Ghibli piece.
So I agree with you 100% because I especially got a Ghibli feeling on some of the other songs on your list. But this one specifically gives me a Leighton vibe, and it's the accordion-like instrument that pulls it in, that pulls that in for me.
Yeah, so maybe some Nishiura there. That would be certainly interesting. Number 2 on the Critical 5, Old Town. Yeah, I think this is definitely a Ghibli one for sure. This is the song that plays as like the overworld theme in the first of the 4 town areas, which is Old Noir. Just this happy little tune. Like it's really allowing you to like get a sense of the controls, and so you're gonna. This is when like I hear this like, oh yeah, definitely this one, because you're trying to get a sense of how to work these gravity shifts. And so yeah, while you're figuring out, it's just this little tune of, you know, you're trying to move about the world. You get some clarinet and flute. It's supported by strings. It gets to a piano part, a bigger orchestral sound. Like it's just a real nice piece while you're learning the basics essentially.
Yeah, this is majorly Ghibli. Like. This reminds me a lot of, which one specifically? Probably Howl, I think, specifically. If not Howl, then maybe like some flavor of Kiki in there.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But it's a really nice sort of piece, and mentioning that it's the song that plays when you're learning how to move around. That fits. I can picture that in my head. That's really good.
But there is a battle element to this game, and number 3 on the critical track is the main battle theme, Resistance and Extermination. I feel like other video game soundtrack shows would want to point this one out from this soundtrack more than any other. It's definitely the most bombastic piece. You're going to hear it a lot because of its, main battle tune. Also just because, like, it's not your usual video game battle song. And I think this is where it also makes me think of Joe Hisaishi in a way, because it kind of makes me think of almost like the Ni no Kuni battle theme, how that one was like, it has an epic feel to it, but it's not your usual kind of video game battle tune. Just a lot of brass, a lot of orchestration, just, really punchy here. It goes into bum 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 bum, like to really get you in this fighting energy, fighting spirit. It has this intense nature to it. But this is one a lot of people point out from this soundtrack. Had to be here.
Though, yeah, if you would have told me this was from Ni no Kuni, I would have believed you. 100%. It doesn't sound like a battle song that I would get tired of, at least. Because it's not in your face. Mm-hmm. It's got that over the Ni no Kuni song, where like that one always opens with the dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
So I feel like I would get tired of it a lot slower than I did the Ni no Kuni battle theme, but it does, I can definitely hear the comparisons to that very easily.
And this is also one, like, when you think of the One Piece score, this is one. It's like, oh yeah, that lines up very well. I can see that for sure. My favorite track in the game is number 4 on the Critical 5. This is Pleasure Quarter. Now, this plays during the second of the 4 town areas. Goes by the name of Pleasure. And this is just the best track. Hands down, I think. It's got like this, the Pleasure Quarter has this Bourbon Street feel to it. Like you're walking in New Orleans, like French inspired. And there are just so many cool instruments just riffing on this jazz. Like, you got a piano, you got a violin or fiddle, you got a banjo going, you got the muted trumpet, all the while the drums are giving you this catchy beat to it. It's a really, really fun one. And I feel like if any song from this game is like borrowed in different places on the internet that maybe you're like, I recognize this song, where do I know? Like, people are going to take this song from this game and try to use it in different places elsewhere. I remember watching the YouTuber Jello Apocalypse's content, specifically in his videos about like, the best YouTube comments of the year, and he gets his friends to do voiceovers of the different YouTube comments. I'm like, oh no, this is Pleasure Quarter from Gravity Rush that you're playing in the background the whole time. Great choice, don't get me wrong, but like not a lot of people are going to know what that's from.
I'm going to agree with you hands down. This is the best song. Upon listening to all of these for the first time at work today, because I've never heard this soundtrack ever, any of it. This was the song where about halfway through, I was like, damn it, I gotta play this game.
Yeah.
Like this song might have sold, like just this song alone might have sold me on Gravity Rush.
It's honestly incredible.
It's so good.
So good. Just so much fun energy to it. And yeah, it's a shame that like this is the best the soundtrack gets. Not that the rest is bad by any means, but like this is such a big high. Such a big high. To wrap up the Critical 5 though, I need to bring up the ending credits theme. And this is Dose Shinun Dakara. So yeah, it's a vocal piece. Vocals by Masako Toda, and the lyrics are by Keiichiro Toyama, the series creator. I really like it because it does have like the same sort of instrument sound as Pleasure Quarter, but just more in this like swing sing-song style. This song is really interesting because it continues the trend throughout the game of spoken word being in this language. And like now that you're hearing it, you're like, oh no, I get it. Like that sounds French. Like, yeah, you'd be understandably mistaken for thinking so. But yeah, it is part of this. If you actually look at the lyrics, like, oh, that's not any language. You made that up, but they really do make it sound French. So when talking about like the lyrics of this song, like Kat has this very like lawful, neutral sort of alignment where she'll help people and all that, but the lyrics initially come off as like depressing when you see like the quote unquote translated version of them. Essentially, like the gist of it is that it doesn't matter if you help everyone because everyone is dying anyway.
Jeez.
And it's like, oh, well, geez. But then I guess when you hear Toyama kind of explain it a little bit, he wrote these lyrics in the aftermath of surprise, the 2011 Tohoku earthquake that we've referenced so frequently on this show. Just caused widespread devastation, and it caused Toyama to feel, in his words, reacquainted with death. So at this time, he was also feeling frustrated with the way the game was being developed and the direction it was going, and he was kind of unsure how it could continue. But then he realized that one day everyone will die, and so he should worry less and just attempt to live more in the moment. So it's almost like a weird silver lining with like this kind of morbid twist to it. As far as like the composition of the music, Tanaka, of course, composed this song as well. But he advised Toda, the vocalist, to sing the song as if she were humming a tune in a bar. And she nails it. I can't imagine what it'd be like to, sing a song in a made-up language like this, but she kills it.
Sometimes I joke and I say, oh man, what's it matter? We're all dying anyway. But I don't write a song about it.
Or, have it be like a way of finishing a video game, a mindset of doing so. I don't know.
Hey, it obviously worked. The song's really good.
It is. It is very good. Let's get to my songs that I have on the cutting room floor here. The first of which being The Phantom of Hexaville. This takes place during Kat's big confrontation with Alias. So Alias is kind of spawning all these different Nevi as Kat has to chase him throughout the city. Take care of the Nevi, don't lose sight of Alias. It's this, he's this phantom of Hexaville that's causing all these Nevi to pop up. So you're definitely getting a more bombastic piece. Some brass in here. The electric guitar is heavy in this, the bass going. All while the drums are really pounding away. Like it's a chase sequence with some battle thrown into it. But the sound of it, it's like, oh yeah, I like this one a lot. Had to be here. Not necessarily in the Critical 5, but here for sure. And then the other one is Fascinating Paths. This is the music for Chapter 10 in the game, titled Curiosity Killed the Cat. You're in the Rift Plane, where it's, Cat has to try to bring back pieces of Hexaville that have mysteriously gone missing, and you have to go to this Rift Plane to do so, and it provides, different challenges on how to work with these gravity powers. Some limitations, perhaps. It adds a little more of a puzzle element to the game. So it plays during this. And so, the back half of the game, especially, like when you're kind of getting into like the nitty gritty of what's going on with the town, it's going to be more industrial, more mechanical. So this is where you're getting more of the synths, the unique percussion sounds. This track in particular stands out as being memorable to me, but I feel it's important to mention at least because it's not all orchestra and happy and jazzy. Like, you're definitely going to get a good chunk of this kind of sound to it. And so, what will I never forget about Gravity Rush? Yeah, the soundtrack especially. Let's be real. That's why I'm really bringing it up on the show. But I like my PlayStation Vita. I have fond memories of Vita. People can knock it all they want, but I had a great time, not only as a Persona 4 machine, a Persona 3 portable machine, an indie machine before Switch took that over, but games like Tearaway, games like Gravity Rush, the unique experiences that you could only play for a time until they came to PlayStation 4. Why isn't Persona 4 Golden on PlayStation 4?
Yeah, that still doesn't make any sense to me. That feels like it should be a slam dunk.
But maybe, eventually, who knows. So to transition to our next game, we like to highlight a fan cover or a fan remix, whether it's on OC Remix on YouTube. On YouTube, on the channel Anime VV, I found a live student piano quintet performance of Pleasure Quarter. It's like it's for a talent show, some sort of performance, but they got piano, they got drums, they got the fiddle going. It's not perfect, but it's pretty darn close, and it's just a whole lot of fun. So kudos to this group of students. Anime VV, check out this performance of Pleasure Quarter. We will be right back.
All right, kids, who's ready to buckle up and get real sad?
Super sad.
Let's talk about To the Moon. To the Moon was originally released November 1st, 2011 for PC. It is a narrative-driven adventure game developed by Canadian studio Freebird Games. In the game, you actually play as two characters, Dr. Eva Rosalind and Dr. Neil Watts. Both of them work for a fictional company called Sigmund Corp that has developed technology that is capable of basically implanting artificial memories in the human brain. Now, obviously, if you're hearing that, you're probably like, that sounds very easily abusable. And you're right. In this world, it is only legal to use this technology on people that are basically at death's door. Like, on their deathbed, they're gonna die very, very, very soon. They're the only people that you're allowed to use these machines on.
Which is why in the movie Inception, if you're thinking about implanting memories, that's why it was kind of done underground and not all on the up and up.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of a weird, not cool idea. That's exactly what Sigma Corp does, though. They do it for people that are on death's door. You can hire them to come and go into your memories as you're dying, and you'll die thinking that you have accomplished all of your goals, all of your big things. You can die with no regrets. Does this sound very sad? Yes. Boy, that is a dire, melancholy concept. I'm not gonna lie. Like, oh man, I'm dying, but I didn't get to do this one thing, and now I'm gonna hire somebody to trick my brain into thinking I did. So yeah, we're already at a melancholy start, and let me tell you kids, melancholy's a good word to describe this game. So at the start of the game, Eva and Neil have been hired by a man named Johnny Wiles and arrive mere hours before his life is to come to an end. Johnny tells them that his dream is to go to the moon, but he does not know why he wants to. They ask, okay, so why do you want to go to the moon? He's like, I don't know. I just feel like I have to. And so Neil and Eva begin their work. They start moving their way through Johnny's memories in reverse from his life as an old man all the way to his childhood, slowly learning not only about his life, but his relationship and marriage to his childhood sweetheart, River, and her odd behavior very shortly before her passing. And their goal is simple. They want to reach the earliest memory that they can, and then use the information they've gained on their way there to alter Johnny's memories into believing he did, in fact, go to the moon. But not everything is as simple as it seems. So in terms of gameplay, To the Moon is a game made in RPG Maker, very similar to Rakuen, which we have talked about in the past. It is, again, an engine used to make retro-style JRPGs, so think old Final Fantasy. The game basically plays a lot like that, with an overworld where you're walking around, pixelated sprites, and all that. But there is no combat, there's no inventory, there's no party, there's nothing you would really expect from your average JRPG. It is mainly just walking around, finding mementos, piecing together memories, and then moving on to the next memory. And sometimes you even have to leave the memories and walk around Johnny's house in real life in order to find a clue that will get you to the next memory. So, this is where I'll ask, what are your experiences with To the Moon?
This game breaks my heart, plain and simple. Not just because of the condition of one of the characters or how the game plays out. Like I've played it twice. Sucks and hurts each time because it's real emotional, and I think it really is one of the best examples of like showing the power of indie games, because in no possible way in a AAA world is a game like To the Moon ever being made. As you said, like the gameplay is lacking for all intents and purposes, but it doesn't need to have an intense gameplay mechanic because the story is everything. The music amplifies that so much more and turns it into an unforgettable experience.
I agree. I've also played it twice. I am soon going to play it a third time, which is one of the reasons why we're talking about it today, for a specific thing that I will bring up at the end of this segment. And I absolutely love this game. It is my favorite indie game of all time. It is among my favorite games of all time. And I've been so excited to talk about it, and the opportunity finally showed up. So let's get back into it then. To the Moon is actually Freebird's fourth game, and by Freebird, in this case, we're mainly talking about one guy. His other three being games called Quintessence, The Blighted Venom, Do You Remember My Lullaby, and The Mirror Lied. I have never played any of these three games, though I honestly probably should. I have heard good things about The Mirror Lied in specific. But To the Moon is the first game that the studio sold commercially. And according to writer Kan Gao, who was basically Freebird at the time and until just recently was still basically Freebird, and we'll talk about him more in a little bit, a large amount of inspiration for the game came from his grandfather being hospitalized from a heart condition and having to get surgery. And he did make sure to mention that his grandfather did come out of that fine. He was still alive. But this event and the subsequent hospital visits that he was doing and all that, they made him start to question the nature of mortality and dying with no regrets. Quote, "This happens to everyone. It made me wonder, when it's my turn to be lying there, will I question what I've done with my life? Will I wonder if I would have done some things differently? I think it's something that everyone thinks about now and then, and so the whole concept for To the Moon grew from that." And so it came from this idea of, am I gonna die with no regrets? Or am I gonna die and wish that I had done things differently? So why not make a game about that? Other inspirations that Gao regularly brought up in the 2 or 3 interviews that I was able to find that I ended up using for information were the films Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Memento. I have not seen either of these films. I know about Memento and I've heard of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, but I've not seen them.
I haven't seen them either, but like you, I know bits and pieces about it. And yeah, that makes sense why he'd be inspired by those in particular.
Mm-hmm. But the one that I have seen that he mentioned as part of his inspiration is the opening montage to Pixar's Up.
Mm.
And yeah, that checks out. That checks out.
Yeah. Have you seen there's a holiday commercial going on from Apple this past holiday? And maybe in a couple years from now, this will be terribly dated, but I don't care. I have to mention it. So it's this commercial about how 2 girls are at their grandparents' house, and grandpa's still here, but grandma's been gone for a while, and so they use the power of Apple and an iPad to create a little slideshow, and some Photoshop stuff to act like, oh, like grandma's still here, and the dad gets super emotional, and I'm like, well, these jerks.
Yeah, no, that's weird. That's weird.
You're using a cover of the music from the opening sequence of Pixar's Up. That's why it's extra emotional. Like, you jerks are doing that on purpose. You're using the music that way. So I gotta put it out there. Like, Apple, I see what you did there.
That's heinous. That's a crime. That's a war crime.
So yeah, I can get all these people who are like, oh my gosh, that commercial's so sad. Like, is it because of the content or is it because of the music?
Like a fiddle,
yeah.
People. No, I have not seen that commercial. I will say, though, the concept behind it of photoshopping somebody into newer pictures to be like, she's still here. That's weird. Mm-hmm. Don't do that.
No. But I'm sorry, to the moon.
Let's talk. I mean, that. All in all, To the Moon took 1.5 years to develop, according to Gao. And Gao was in the position of writer, director, and composer for this game. Outside of him, he says that there were about 7 artists that contributed to graphical assets and multiple others that helped with programming, though since he was using a pre-built engine in RPG Maker, there wasn't as much programming needed as there generally would be to make a game from scratch. So, originally, the game only released on Gao's personal website, but it later made its way to Steam and GOG. Steam is where I ended up buying and playing it. It's where I found it back when it was possible to find new things on Steam's store. Boy, what an old ancient era that was.
What a time.
The original release only worked for PC, but a port for Mac and Linux was released in January of 2014, so even if you don't just have a Windows computer, you can still play To the Moon. Upon release, it actually had pretty generally positive reception. Many critics claimed that while the gameplay, again, is nothing really special, it's kind of lacking in general, the story and the music make up for it heavily. Like, more than make up for it. Its Metacritic score currently sits at 81 out of 100. And in terms of awards, GameSpot actually gave To the Moon their Best Story Award in 2011. And its competition was Catherine, Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, Portal 2, and Xenoblade Chronicles.
Oh, man.
That is a stacked category, and To the Moon came out on top. If you want any indication as to how good this game's story is. And that same website actually nominated it also for Best Music, Most Memorable Moment, Best Writing/Dialogue, Best Ending, and Song of the Year. In terms of follow-ups, in 2014, a small side story game called A Bird Story released that was meant to be a sort of bridge between To the Moon and its upcoming sequel, Finding Paradise. Which Finding Paradise actually came out in December of 2017. It is also very good. I'll be real. I almost did that instead of To the Moon, but I figured, no, I gotta do To the Moon. Because that game also has a very, very good soundtrack that I actually think I like a little bit better than To the Moon's. Slightly. And there's also an animated film based on To the Moon in production right now.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, with confirmation that Gao will be helping write and supervise the scripting process. It's an animated movie being developed by a Japanese studio, namely the same Japanese studio that animated Your Name.
Oh, Jesus.
And I'm very, 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 very excited and really hope that that movie is good. And also still happening, because I don't think we've heard anything about it in like 1.5 years.
I mean, if you want people tugging at the heartstrings, that's who you get to do it, so.
Mm-hmm. And then, on Thanksgiving of 2019, a third game was announced called Imposter Factory. It is currently set for release sometime near the end of 2020, but its connection to the Moon and Finding Paradise is unclear, as while To the Moon is marked as episode 1 of this overarching story, about Eva and Neil. And Finding Paradise is marked as episode 2. Imposter Factory is marked as episode X. So who knows what it could be?
And who knows if it will even launch at the end of 2020.
Yeah, that's also the question. It might not. But hey, you take as long as you need, Freebird. Not only that, but in 2 days from time of release, on January 16th, To the Moon is finally being released on Nintendo Switch, which is why we are talking about it today. And I'm actually going to be streaming it a whole 2 days early on NWR on January 14th. Actually, at time of recording, got the code today. So, yeah. I'm looking forward to that. Definitely come check it out, but maybe only check it out for a little bit and then go by and play the game.
Right.
It's a really hard recommendation, but I mean, hey, it's really, really good. You can come watch me cry for 3 hours.
Because this was a game where, like, it really caught, like, a time with YouTube of, like, with PewDiePie, with Markiplier, with these different Let's Players at a time where this game comes out and it's like, oh, it's going to make you cry. And so they want that YouTube money. So they play this game. And you got a lot of people who have watched this game, but like, have you actually played it? It's like, there's something to be said. You can still get an emotional impact out of watching it, certainly. But when you play it, just that little bit more of twisting the knife.
Mm-hmm. It's a very, very good game. I highly recommend it if you have not played it. It gets super cheap on Steam all the time. And Finding Paradise is also very, very good.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, in terms of composers, we're going to talk about Kan Gao. As much as I can, which isn't much, because I couldn't find anything on him. Pretty much every interview I could find was about the game, not really about him. So it would be like about the development of To the Moon, and he wouldn't really give any personal details. He doesn't have a Wikipedia article. He doesn't have an article on any other wiki, anything, anywhere. So the information I found on him is pretty nothing. He grew up in Asia, and he grew up playing video games, but mainly he started off, instead of writing like video games, he just sort of wrote fiction, like novels and short stories and stuff like that. And then one day, he describes it as a dark and stormy night, which I doubt it was. He decided, while he was stuck writing a particular story, that, you know what, I want to turn this into a video game. And so he did. I assume this was his first game, that
Quintessence, yeah.
Yeah, I assume that's what that was. And then I believe To the Moon, he said, was like an attempt to take an edgy story from his teenage years and fix it up to be like a serviceable video game. He went to school for business administration and computer science. And thus ends the amount of information I was able to find on Mr. Gao. He's based out of Canada. He goes by the name Reeves, Reives. That's it. Same with his discography. Honestly, that wasn't just, I couldn't find anything. It's Freebird games are it. That's his discography. He's done all of them, obviously, because, again, until recently, Freebird Games was Kan Gao. And then people he brought in to help him every once in a while. Apparently, according to his Twitter, he does have like actual people that also work full time for the studio with him now. So that's cool. And that'll only help the quality of the games go up, which, considering where they started, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, no kidding.
As for historical development research, I did find one cool tidbit in one of those interviews, being that his main process was something that I don't think we've ever heard any of our other composers say, because I don't think any of our other composers, maybe like 3 of them are also the writers of the games, like Laura Shigihara, and I can't think of another, like Eric Barone.
Yeah, he'd be another, yeah.
I can't think of anybody else. So he said that his main process was that he would be writing dialogue, and then when he felt like he was stuck writing that dialogue, like felt writer's block coming along, he would stop and go compose the music for the scene that he was writing, and then play that music in the background while he continued writing the scene, and he said that would help him get back in the flow of writing. And that's such an interesting, like, order of doing things, I think. Because as somebody who, most of my creativity is driven by the music I'm listening to, like most scenes and anything creative that I'm trying to like get down anywhere is bolstered by listening to the music that inspired it in the first place. I can definitely see that working, and I'm kind of surprised that we've never seen any other composer say that that is a similar process to theirs. But other than that, I couldn't find anything on there was very little information on the development of this game, which is unfortunate because I really want to know more. And honestly, I think Kan Gao is like up near the top of my wish list for people that I want to interview for this show. And hopefully we get that opportunity at some point. We'll see though. But I've yammered on for long enough. It's time to talk about how this game like sounds. So for our 5 critical tracks, there is no song that we can start with that is more appropriate than For River, Sarah and Tommy's version. This is a small and beautiful piano duet, and there's really not much to it, which is actually a joke that's made in the game several times. Like, I think multiple times people will look at the sheet music and go, this is like the same 2 notes just over and over again. But this song is so pretty and has so much meaning and is a leitmotif that you hear throughout the entire rest of the soundtrack.
Yes.
And is also one of the first songs you hear in the game. As you are walking into the house, you hear Sarah and Tommy, who are Johnny's caretaker's kids, playing this duet as the like titles go in and everything, and it's so good. I really like this song. I consider it the main theme of To the Moon, even though officially it is not the main theme of To the Moon. But for me, when I think of this game, this is one of the first songs to come to mind. Yeah,
I totally agree. Like, if you're going to bring up a song, it had to be a version of For River. Yeah, you're absolutely right when it comes to the da 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 da. But little Nelly's like da 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 da, like just things like that. Man, yeah, it brings back all the memories of this game for sure.
In universe, this is a song that Johnny wrote for River, hence the name For River. And I still remember the scene where he first plays it for her in one of the memories. And she responds with, "It's not very good." I disagree, River, but also that joke is one of my favorite jokes that is done throughout the entire game. I think even during like one of the ending sections, there's a point where he's playing it and the song has been retitled for reasons that I will get into later when we've hit the spoiler area of this show, because there will be a spoiler area. One of the people in the room is just like, it's all right. It's very repetitive. And I just really like that joke. I don't know why. Even if I love this song, it's so good. Track number 2 is Anya by The Stars. So, River is a very interesting character, a very well-written character, in that it's never, like, straight up confirmed, but it is implied that she has Asperger's. So, like, that in itself is a plus, because, like, you know, you don't get neuroatypical characters very often, and usually when you do, they're not super well done, but River is one of those characters that is, like, I think, personally, very, very well done. And she has a bit of a fixation on lighthouses for a reason that is heartbreakingly explained later in the game. But this music happens to play during a point where they have just been married. Johnny and River have just gotten married, and they're sort of sitting next to a lighthouse that was built next to the home that they are building. They're sort of just sitting against the lighthouse and like, so what now? Like, do you feel any different now that we're married? And they have this whole conversation, and they end up naming this lighthouse Anya. And then they go up into the lighthouse chamber and they dance, and it's one of the more memorable scenes in the game. And it's such a beautiful piece for such an adorable scene. Oh, I love this game.
And the music just swells and with such positivity, just with such a beauty to it. And, you know, enjoy it while it lasts, because, you know, there are beautiful moments in this game, but you have to have the good before things happen.
And speaking of things happening, critical track number 3 is Beta B. So, this isn't actually a song I think many people would think about when thinking about To the Moon, because it only plays in one area, and that's where I'm going to say, hey, spoiler alert! If you have not played To the Moon and you do not want it spoiled, this is the stopping point. This is the wall. Move on, because I'm not holding back after this. Are we good? We're good. So at a certain point, when they go back into Johnny's childhood, they find that those memories are messed up, yo! Like real messed up and glitching and terrifying, actually. And that's the first time you hear this really, really tense, sort of sinister music, honestly. And you learned that when Johnny was a kid, he had a brother, and that brother died in an accident, which sort of sent his mother off the deep end. And in order to, quote unquote, save him from the trauma, she gave him beta blockers, which I don't remember exactly what they're supposed to be. I don't think they're real. I think they're a fictional concept that exists in this universe. But they induce memory loss in Johnny, and he completely forgets his brother ever existed. And he also forgets something else very, very important, which we will get to in a minute. But this song also plays when Eva is making a devastating choice. Despite you, as the player, controlling Neil, trying to stop her.
Yeah, so if it sounds totally different than the rest of the soundtrack, that's why. It makes me think of, for whatever reason, like old school Resident Evil, or just like some sort of intended to be spooky game. Because yeah, it's eerie. All right.
Mm-hmm. But let's pull it back just a little bit with critical track number 4, Once Upon a Memory. So when I say he also lost a very important memory in the past, well, this is the song that plays during that memory. So I mentioned that River was having like very odd behavior shortly before she passed. And that behavior was basically she was making a bunch of origami rabbits, just a ton of them, over and over and over and over again. And the whole game, one of the mysteries is, what happened? What the hell was that about? What happened? And this is the scene that reveals what that was. See, while Johnny thinks that the first time they met was in school, and then they sort of became a couple from there, they actually met before that. And River remembers, and Johnny does not, because of the aforementioned beta blockers. And this song plays when they first meet as kids after a carnival, and they talk about constellations, and they decide that they create a constellation that is a rabbit, where the ears and the feet are separated by the moon, which is the rabbit's big stomach. And so at one point, like this scene reveals so much. It reveals why she's making the origami rabbits. She's trying to jog his memory and make him remember the rabbit. Why she likes lighthouses so much. They're talking about stars, and she points out that she feels like every star is a lighthouse in the distance, and they're all lonely because they can shine light to each other, but none of them will ever get to each other. She says, I'm gonna befriend one day. And it also reveals why Johnny wants to go to the moon, because at one point, while Johnny's leaving, he asks, "Are you going to be here next year?" And River says, "Yes." He says, "Let's meet here again next year." And he gets ready to leave, and River asks, "What if you forget or get lost?" And Johnny responds, "Then we can always regroup on the moon." And so, because River died, and he felt guilty and didn't realize why, his subconscious was telling him to go to the moon so he could meet up with River. I'm tearing up just describing this. And it even reveals the origins of River's little stuffed platypus that she has throughout the entire game whenever you see her, because Johnny gave it to her during that memory. It's such a good scene, and this song brings it all together, and it's so good.
And the music is so heartfelt for such a pure childhood moment. But yeah, all that goes with it, because he has forgotten it because it's blocking out the memory of his brother's accident.
Which happens shortly after, I believe like 2 days after this memory.
Yeah. So just awful. Yeah, part of what makes this game hurt so much, but that's only just the beginning.
Yeah, because after this, they finally get far enough back, and they're like, all right, we're going to alter his memories. We're going to basically convince his childhood self that he has to go to the moon. And then it doesn't work. And they try it over and over again, and it doesn't work. And Eva sort of realizes that in order to get him to go to the moon, she has to make it so that he never gets into a relationship with River. And she basically has to go through and erase his relationship with River so that he will go to the moon to meet up with River. And after that happens, you are treated to a montage with my favorite song in the game, critical track number 5, Everything's All Right.
I'll ask you to fly away with me until the stars all fall down. They empty from the sky, but I don't mind. If you're with me, then everything's all right.
Or, as our friend Matt likes to call it, Everything's All Right, the song that plays when absolutely nothing is all right.
Yeah, and if you're wondering on the video version, the title is one word with all right. That's not us. Mm-hmm. That's just how it is.
So this song is written and performed by Laura Shigihara, whom we have talked about on this show before. It is not actually my first experience with Laura Shigihara, but it's my first experience knowing the name Laura Shigihara, because I had played Plants vs. Zombies before that. I just didn't realize that was her. And it plays during a montage of Johnny working to join NASA and go to the moon. And the whole time, you as a player are like, so did they just erase River from his life completely? And then River shows up at NASA too. Because they're going to go to the moon together. And it's a moment where you just sort of watch and you cry. And this song is so melancholy and the lyrics have so much meaning. Where like the first part of the song is about Johnny's sort of perception of River. And the second part of the song is about River's perception of Johnny. Mm-hmm. And it's just such a good song. Honestly, if there was any song in the world that I could choose to learn and play on the piano and also learn to sing it at the same time, I think it'd be this one.
Yeah, it's powerful, honestly. I think it's the one song that everyone who's played it will remember fully. It's so important. Yeah, I think that's a good description of how powerful it is. And it was so difficult to pick 30 seconds. Like, not even the full chorus I could fit in, honestly. So please go listen to the full song. Of course, if you're listening this far, you had the game spoiled for you. But, if you've played it, go and listen to the full song again. Just enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. And go play the game. I don't care if you're spoiled now. Go play it. So, cutting room floor. We each have 2. Hit me with yours.
I'm going to bring things up a little bit. My first one is Take Me Anywhere. And yes, I know it is a faster version of the Four River theme, but horse riding. They're riding horses together. And it's like one of the few fully joyful songs in this game. Like, this song has a positive energy unlike any other on the soundtrack. So I think just for diversity's sake, it had to be here.
Mm-hmm.
The second will go right back down in that emotional well. This is Born a Stranger. This plays at a couple moments during the game. Just very depressing moments. A lot of memories before River's passing. Also, when Neil and Eva are in Johnny's childhood home, like basically right before, Everything's Alright plays. So it's just this gut punch of a piano piece, just the melody. There's like a hiss, like a gnat sound to it all, like kind of makes it feel a little more naturally recorded in a way, which, not necessarily all of them are, but it just adds a little, more of a melancholy layer to it.
Mm-hmm. For me, my two tracks are Having Lived. It's just another gorgeous piano piece, of which I'm sure you've noticed this game has quite a few of them. I wonder which instrument Kan Gao plays. And this actually plays the first time that Eva and Neil speak to Johnny in his final, latest accessible memory, when he explains his wish to them, which is he wants to go to the moon, but does not know why. And my other cutting room floor track is Moon Wisher. I couldn't find exactly where the song was played. I was scrubbing through a long play to make sure I had a lot of these locations correct, but I really like this song a lot. It's very melancholy, but it also has like a hopeful tinge to it, I feel like. You can hear like parts of the Four River leitmotif in there, and like parts are slowly built in as it goes, and it's just masterful. I love this song. I love this soundtrack.
We had so many just listed as like possible cutting room floor, and it was really hard to whittle down. So I'm not going to say compare it to the Chrono Trigger soundtrack, but for a soundtrack that it's not a long game, like it's
3 hours, 3.5,
4 hours maybe. Yeah. So if you're thinking like there's so much music to cover that, it's like really not all that much, but so many of those tunes are just like, oh, yep, this one. This one's absolutely memorable. It's important. And so I think we did a good job pulling it all together.
I agree with that. So what will I never forget about To the Moon? This game holds a very, very special place in my heart. Kan Gao has basically earned my money at launch every time he releases a game. Ever. Until he starts making really bad games, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. And just, again, this is one of my favorite games of all time. It's definitely my favorite narrative game ever. I think this is one of the most masterful, like, narratives in video games in general. And yeah, the gameplay leaves a lot to be desired, but like, the story makes it worth it 100%. This is a game I'll never forget, truly.
Yeah, the gameplay is not bad. Let's be very clear. It's just simplistic and a means to an end. Honestly, though, yeah, this is a game that we can never forget. And I think if you don't have Kan Gao and his games on your radar, and you're looking for emotional storytelling in a game, better start playing To the Moon, play A Bird's Story, play Finding Paradise, and we'll see what happens for his next release. Man, powerful games, both of them. One, I'd say a much better story than the other, but both great soundtracks, and that's what we're here to talk about today. Whether it's involving one with a gravity cat, or there are origami bunny rabbits, Gravity, To the Moon, just Man, good week. Good week overall. So that will do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakEasy. Joe is over at Thorobaga. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, also at rhymeswithasia.com. But the MP3 podcast version is hosted on Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. Get that MP3 podcast version on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, other podcast storefronts around the world, including Spotify. So that's pretty great. You can bring the shows with you in your car, on a run, at work, and we won't tell your boss that you're listening to great conversations about fantastic video game soundtracks. And then when you're done with that, find us on social media at Soundchat OST and leave feedback for us. How are we doing? What did you like? What do you not like? Leave suggestions for us on games that we still could cover and talk about on the show. And then also on the Spotify playlist that we gather all the songs that we've talked about on the show in this big, huge Spotify playlist. Anything added this week?
Surprisingly, no. Gravity Rush, I'm really surprised by because SIE is usually really good at that. I don't think we've talked about an SIE game that wasn't on Spotify before, so that's a new one. And then also To the Moon, I'm a little bit surprised because Laura Shigihara's stuff is on there, and you'd think Kan Gao, who is very closely associated with her, would also be there, but sadly, this is not the case.
Unfortunate. Well, then we'll still keep working on things to try to get some more interviews lined up. We got, since we did Best of 2019, we're going to start working on Best of 2018 and see how far back we can go from there. Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I'm talking about Yuzo Koshiro.
Oh, finally. Good to talk about him. I will be talking about Noboru Muto. Speaking of best soundtracks from 2018, we're going to talk about one from that year. It should be very good. Looking forward to next week. Absolutely. All right, Joe, let's play us out.
So, obviously, the song I was going to find a remix of for this game was Everything's Alright, though this one was actually suggested by you, and I heard it and agreed that this should probably be the one we went with. So, it is a remix of Everything's Alright by Emily Schultz, that's EMS Arcade, on YouTube. So please enjoy that.
Yeah, a lot of views on that one, and it makes sense why. Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Until the stars